Every human being carries a shadow. But Carl Jung warned us, the most dangerous shadows are the ones tied to sex and desire. Because unlike anger or pride, sexual shadows don't just stay hidden in the mind. They shape the way you love, the partners you choose, and the patterns you can't escape. The psychology of sexual shadows is the study of what we hide when it comes to intimacy. It's the forbidden impulses, the unspoken fantasies, the cravings we never admit out loud. Most people bury them. Some disguise them as love. Others project them onto their partners. But no matter how you try to escape, the shadow always finds a way to reveal itself. Why sexual shadows are so powerful. Sexual energy is raw. It is primal. It is life itself. That's why it's so difficult to control and so easy to corrupt. Jung explained that what we repress in our unconscious doesn't disappear. It grows stronger. When you deny your darkest sexual urges, they don't die. They slip into the shadow. And from there, they guide your behavior in ways you don't notice. This is why so many people sabotage themselves in relationships. They're not loving from a place of awareness. They're acting out the scripts of their shadow. They call it attraction, but it's really compulsion. They call it passion, but it's really unresolved trauma. They call it destiny, but it's really the shadow pulling the strings. The mask of love. The sexual shadow often hides under the mask of love. You meet someone, you feel intense chemistry, you can't stop thinking about them. It feels like fate. But what's really happening is projection. You're projecting your own unconscious desires onto the other person. That's why the attraction feels so powerful, but also so unstable. Because you're not connecting with the real person. You're connecting with your own shadow, reflected back at you. And when the mask slips, when the fantasy dies, you're left with emptiness, confusion, and regret. Common sexual shadows. The shadow of possession. The belief that intimacy means ownership. This shadow fuels jealousy, obsession, and control. It convinces you that love cannot exist without chains. The shadow of addiction. The hunger for constant stimulation. This shadow disguises itself as passion, but in truth, it is never satisfied. It leaves you restless, always chasing, never fulfilled. The shadow of innocence, the mask of purity, hiding darker impulses. The brighter the innocence, the darker the hidden desires behind it. This shadow seduces by appearing harmless. The shadow of power, the use of sex as domination. This shadow doesn't seek love, it seeks control. It turns intimacy into a battlefield where one must win and the other must submit. Every man and woman carries some form of these shadows. To deny them is to be enslaved by them. To face them is to finally begin to love without illusion. Why most people stay blind. The truth is that most people don't want to face their sexual shadows. It's easier to blame partners, easier to chase pleasure, easier to call lust love than to confront the truth. But Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's why so many men and women repeat the same cycles. They think they're cursed in love. They think they're unlucky in relationships. In reality, they're trapped in their own sexual shadows, playing the same story again and again. The beginning of freedom. The psychology of sexual shadows isn't about repression. It's about awareness. When you recognize your own shadows, your hidden cravings, your unconscious fears, you stop being controlled by them. You begin to choose instead of being chosen by your impulses. Spiritually awake, people don't run from desire. They see through it. They don't demonize lust, but they don't worship it either. They transform it. They turn the raw energy of desire into intimacy, creativity, and love. And that transformation is the difference between being enslaved by the shadow and being freed by it. Carl Jung believed that attraction is never random. We are not pulled toward people by accident. We are pulled by the unconscious. And when it comes to intimacy, nothing directs attraction more powerfully than the sexual shadow. This is why people are drawn to those who break them. It's why a man keeps chasing the same type of woman, even after being betrayed. It's why a woman keeps falling for men who drain her, even after swearing she won't repeat it again. They are not in love with the person. They are in love with their own shadow, projected onto that person. The shadow's trick. The sexual shadow has one trick. It convinces you that your craving is love. You meet someone, your heart races, your mind is consumed, your body feels alive. You say, "This must be love. Nothing else could feel this strong." But Jung explained that the shadow always disguises itself as destiny. What feels magnetic is often not love, it's compulsion. It's the shadow trying to balance what you've repressed. If you've buried your need for validation, you'll be drawn to someone who thrives on your attention. If you've repressed your hunger for control, you'll be attracted to someone who dominates you. If you've denied your own lust, you'll fall hardest for those who weaponize it against you. The attraction feels intense because it's not about the other person. It's about your own unconscious trying to surface. Why you fall for the wrong people. Most men and women don't see this. They keep falling for the wrong people because they think attraction is proof of love. But attraction without awareness is a trap. The woman who feels like fire might actually be your unresolved shadow of lust. The man who feels like destiny might really be your addiction to validation. The person who feels like you can't live without them might be the shadow keeping you chained. That's why breakups feel like death. It's not just losing the person. It's losing the part of yourself you projected onto them. And until you confront that, you will keep chasing the same faces in different bodies. The pattern of sexual shadows. Think about it. How many men fall for women who seduce them only to drain their energy? How many women fall for men who promise love, only to withhold it for control? How many relationships burn with passion in the beginning, but collapse under emptiness later? This is the pattern of sexual shadows. At first, it feels like ecstasy. Later, it feels like poison. And yet, people keep returning to it, because they are addicted to the shadow's promise. The shadow always balances. Jung said the unconscious always seeks balance. That means your shadow will push you toward people who reflect your unacknowledged parts. If you've hidden your aggression, you'll be drawn to someone who expresses it for you. If you've denied your lust, you'll be attracted to someone who radiates it. If you've buried your fear of abandonment, you'll obsess over someone who triggers it. The people you desire the most are often the ones most dangerous to you, because they carry the keys to the parts of yourself you refuse to face. When the mask falls, every shadow eventually reveals itself. The woman who seemed angelic shows her hunger for control. The man who seemed protective shows his addiction to power. The lover who felt like passion becomes a stranger who leaves you empty. When the mask falls, most people are devastated. They feel betrayed, abandoned, fooled. But the truth is, they were fooled not by the other person, but by their own shadow. The shadow used the other person as a mirror, and when the reflection changed, the illusion collapsed. The cost of blindness. The greatest cost of sexual shadows is time. People waste years, even decades, chasing shadows instead of love. They repeat the same toxic cycles, believing they are cursed in relationships, never realizing the curse is unconscious. They build marriages on shadows, only to watch them collapse. They call betrayal fate, when it was really blindness. They call obsession love, when it was really addiction. Jung's words echo here. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The beginning of clarity. Spiritually awake. People begin to see the difference. They learn to pause when attraction feels overwhelming. They ask, is this love or is this shadow? They begin to separate intimacy from compulsion, love from lust, truth from illusion. This doesn't mean they stop feeling desire. It means they stop being controlled by it. They love with their eyes open. They no longer confuse chaos for chemistry. They no longer mistake their wounds for their destiny. And once you see through the sexual shadow, you cannot go back. What once seemed irresistible now looks obvious. What once chained you now feels weak. And in that moment, you take the first step toward real freedom. Carl Jung taught that the shadow cannot be destroyed. It cannot be repressed out of existence. The more you push it away, the stronger it becomes. And nowhere is this more true than with sexual shadows. Every desire you deny, every impulse you bury, every craving you refuse to admit, doesn't disappear. It hides. It becomes darker, hungrier, and more powerful. And from the shadows, it shapes your choices. It decides who you're drawn to. It decides how you behave in intimacy. It decides the fate of your relationships. This is why repression never works. The man who pretends he has no lust becomes consumed by it in secret. The woman who masks her need for power ends up manipulating unconsciously. The couple who denies their sexual shadow together ends up acting it out through betrayal, obsession, or silence. The only path forward is not repression, but integration. What integration means. Integration is not about eliminating desire. It is about facing it honestly. It means admitting to yourself, yes, I have these urges, I have these fantasies, I have these fears. Instead of denying them, you bring them into the light. The moment you make the unconscious conscious, the shadow loses its grip. What once controlled you in secret now becomes a choice you can control. The man who integrates his lust no longer chases blindly. He channels that energy into intimacy, creativity, or discipline. The woman who integrates her hunger for validation no longer drains others. She transforms it into genuine connection. The person who integrates their fear of abandonment no longer clings desperately. They learn to love with freedom. Integration is not the death of desire. It is the rebirth of love. The freedom that follows. When the sexual shadow is integrated, intimacy changes completely. Attraction no longer blinds you. You see clearly and still choose. Desire no longer consumes you. You experience it without chains. Love no longer feels like hunger. It becomes connection, presence, and truth. You stop repeating the same cycles. You stop chasing the same toxic patterns. You stop confusing obsession with destiny. For the first time, you are free to love without illusions. Why most never reach this. Most people will never reach this stage because it requires brutal honesty. It means admitting that the relationships you thought were love were really shadow. It means facing the fact that you were addicted, manipulated, deceived, not by others, but by yourself. And most people would rather stay blind than face that pain. They would rather keep chasing shadows and calling it passion than confront the truth and be free. But Jung warned us, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The death of illusion feels like suffering, but it is really the beginning of freedom. The new way of loving. A man or woman who has integrated their sexual shadow loves differently. They no longer project their wounds onto their partners. They no longer need others to complete them. They no longer chase chemistry for the sake of chaos. Instead, they choose consciously. They see their partner clearly, light and shadow both. And they love without illusion. This kind of love is rare, but it is real. It is not built on hunger. It is built on awareness. It is not born from compulsion. It is born from choice. It is not chained to fear. It is free. And this is the only kind of love that lasts. Jung's final warning. Carl Jung's words echo louder here than anywhere else. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If you don't face your sexual shadow, you will spend your life calling betrayal bad luck. You will call obsession love. You will call emptiness fate. But it was never fate. It was blindness. The psychology of sexual shadows is simple. Whatever you refuse to see in yourself will appear in the people you love. If you don't face it, you'll keep repeating it. If you do face it, you'll finally be free. So I'll leave you with this. Are you brave enough to face your sexual shadow? Or will you let it keep writing your destiny in secret? Comment your answer below. And if this opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe, and consider a super thanks to support more shadow psychology content here on Psychatic.